Hi, boys. Welcome to Wednesday's History Daddy Cast. Today we are learning about Sumer and Akkad from between 5000 to 1600 BC. The first people to settle in Mesopotamia were the Sumerians more than 7,000 years ago. They built a number of independent city states, the first civilization. The Sumerian civilization consisted of a number of city-states, cities that were also independent nations. Some of these cities lasted for 3,000 years. They were located on important trade routes along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Their traders traveled to Egypt and India. In this map, we can see that the fertile Tigris and Euphrates river valleys acted as the birthplace of trading cities, extending their influence far and wide, an attractive target for marauding warriors. So here's Sumer with cities like Umma and Lagash. And here's Akkad with Babylon and Kish. Down here we have the city of Ur. Way over here is the Mediterranean Ocean. Sumerian cities. Each city-state had fine public buildings, markets, workshops, and water systems. There was a royal palace and a ziggurat, on top of which was a shrine dedicated to the god of that city. Around the public buildings were houses. Beyond these lay the farmers' fields and the marshlands of the Mesopotamian rivers. Here it says, in 2360 BC, Sargon of Akkad invaded Mesopotamia, carving out the world's first empire. Reading and writing. The Sumerians devised one of the earliest writing systems, cuneiform. From about 3200 BC, they wrote on clay tablets, and scribes held a key role in their society. Thousands of tablets have survived, containing accounts, records, sacred scripts, and letters. The contents of their graves have shown that the Sumerians were wealthy and their craftspeople skilled. Scribes and accountants were important and involved in all aspects of Sumerian daily life, including trade, law, and religion. This reed house was occupied by early Sumerians, therefore, or before bricks were used. Reed houses were still built by marsh Arabs until just recently. It's really pretty cool looking. It's like a cathedral made of reeds. Ziggurats. Built of sun-baked clay bricks, ziggurats towered impressively over the river plains. Building them demanded careful architecture and engineering. The shrine at the top was dedicated to the god of the city. Here, priest-kings performed rituals to benefit the cities and their lands and to appease the gods. This is a drawing of the great ziggurat at Ur. Internal strife. Around 2900 BC, with city populations growing, power shifted away from the priesthoods which had been all-powerful, commerce gradually becoming more important than religion. Rivalry between different cities grew, and they fought each other for supremacy. They were also invaded by tribes from Persia, Arabia, and Turkey who wanted to share the city's wealth and power. Akkad and Ur. Eventually, the city of Akkad grew dominant. The city was led by Sargon, who created the world's first empire around 2334 BC. His rule brought more order, but it also brought cruelty and violence. Around 2100 BC, as Akkad declined, the city of Ur took its place, rising to prominence for a century. After its fall, Assyria and Babylon grew to dominate the area. The Sumerians, 5000 BC to 2000 BC, the first great civilization. Some 7,000 years ago, farmers began to move into the area between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers and settle there. This area was later called Mesopotamia by the ancient Greeks, which means the land between two rivers. It is roughly where Iraq is now. Life was hard there. The weather was hot and dry, the rivers flooded, but the land was fertile when properly looked after. Gradually, in the south, in the land of Sumer, a great civilization grew up. Here is a map of Sumer. The land of Sumer, where the Sumerians lived, was in the southern part of Mesopotamia. The land near the Persian Gulf was marshy and difficult to farm, but there was plenty of fish and wild fowl there for the settlers to eat. To the north of Sumer was the land which later became Akkad. So these little symbols are the city-states. They look a little bit like ziggurats, and this is marshy land. Here's some of the cities: Eridu, Ur, Larsa, Lagash, Uruk, Kish, Eshuna. So down here was Sumer. All right, here we have this picture. Box 1. Sumer had no stone or tall trees for building. The first houses there were built with reeds. The Marsh Arabs who live in the area today still build reed houses. 2. The two rivers flooded in early summer. The Sumerians built a system of irrigation canals to water their fields and drain the land. 3. Later, the Sumerians built their houses of sun-dried mud bricks. These mud brick buildings kept them cool in summer and warm in winter. 4. Every village was under the protection of a god or goddess who lived in a temple built on a platform. The priests of the temple became very powerful and important. 5. The Sumerian villages grew into self-governing city-states, which were huge walled cities with a temple at the center and farmland all around. You can see the temple and all the houses, and outside all the farmland. 6. Sometimes one city-state conquered another and ruled it for a while, but no one king ever made himself ruler of the whole of Sumer, let alone the whole of Mesopotamia. How we know. Look at these pictures. An inlaid box was found at Ur. It is called the battle standard, but it may have been part of a musical instrument. It shows scenes of life in peacetime on one side and scenes of war on the other. From this we learn what Sumerian warriors, weapons, and chariots looked like. The Sumerians did not have horses, so the chariots were pulled by donkeys or wild asses called onagers. We can get some idea of what the Sumerians looked like and the clothes they wore from statues found in their temples. Nobles or priests seem to have shaved their heads. Here is the ziggurat of Ur. At the top is the holy shrine where the patron god of the city had one of his dwelling places. The temple staff lived in these houses behind. The ziggurat is thought to have been about 21 meters high, so maybe about 65 feet, or a 6-story building. Here's a religious procession on its way to the temple. By about 2000 BC, the temples on the platforms had developed into huge temple towers called ziggurats, like this one at Ur. The temples employed large numbers of craftsmen, laborers, and scribes. All right, that's it for this Daddy Cast. I hope you learned something.